My name is Shali Katana, and I'm one of the directors here at MSBA. And we are hosting a series of what we're calling coffee talks with the various sections of the MSBA to provide updates from our end and to hear from section members about how you're doing, how you're feeling. And for those members who are unable to join us on this chat, we will provide this recording and provide an update to those individuals, and we'll aim to have these as a series. So I'd say today is just the beginning, just the start, and we want to make this as helpful and useful to you. So please send us feedback, give us ideas about how we can make this the best experience for you. So I would just like to start off to give some overview of what we've been up to at the MSBA, and we do have some directors and staff on the call as well, and I'll ask them to share as well. But since the COVID crisis began, we've been very active in trying to make sure that we're providing information to our members and to the legal profession as a whole. We created a dedicated COVID page, which has several resources for remote business, dealing with the economic impacts as an employer or as an employee during the crisis. We have several health and wellness offerings there. And we also have all of our webinars that are upcoming as well as on demand. So you can click there at your convenience and just have a whole host of information there. And then, of course, having all of the court updates and modified procedures, kind of one place to get all of that information. And I'll turn now to Richard Montgomery, who is our legislative director, and he's going to give us an update on some of the partners that we've been working with. Thanks, Richard.
Good morning, everyone. The MSBA has been working with pretty much every segment of the legal community when it comes to fielding questions and offering and trying to develop guidance for the members in a variety of areas. We've been working a lot with the Governor's Office and Legal Counsel in terms of getting guidance at several levels on executive orders that have been issued by the governor. Governor's executive orders tend to be very, very broad. So what ends up happening is they need interpretive guidance to tell people what they actually mean in practice. And those are usually developed in conjunction with either the governor's legislative office or the appropriate state agency and sometimes local entities as well. So we've been fielding questions from members and bundling those, and we've sent out and received 2 sets of questions and answers from the Governor's Office of Legal Counsel, and a third set should be going today or certainly by the end of the day or tomorrow morning. And those have been tremendously helpful. The MSBA has also been very active in developing a couple of executive orders. The first being on remote notarization. It was a bill that was enacted by the General Assembly to provide for remote notarization, but it has an effective date of October 1st, 2020. So because of social distancing and stay-at-home orders, there's a major hurdle in getting documents, especially in the real estate area, notarized. So the governor's executive order provides for immediate remote notarization. We're working on a somewhat related executive order now dealing with remote witnessing, and that's been a big issue and a big barrier in the area of estate planning documents. So I think we're close to having language ready for the governor's office that's based on a bill, an emergency bill. When we thought that there was going to be a special session in May, the bill was emanating from the Estates and Trust section. So we think that the language from the draft emergency bill would be a good roadmap for the governor's office in terms of crafting an executive order. On another front, back during the 2020 session, the MSBA partnered with the Maryland Chamber of Commerce in defeating a piece of legislation that would have extended the sales and use tax to, among other things, legal services. And in that partnership, we decided to formalize that partnership by subscribing for a membership with the Chamber of Commerce. There is a Chamber of Commerce COVID-19 work group that meets every Thursday. So there'll be a meeting not long after this meeting. And it's basically broadly about economic resilience through the pandemic. But it's been a tremendous resource for all of the participants in terms of where to go for this, that, or the other. The first set of discussions last week dealt principally with the Paycheck Protection Program. And I'm not sure that there's much less confusion now than there was last Thursday. Of course, now there are regulations and guidelines related to it, but there's still a lot of confusion over which banks are participating and exactly what relationships business needs to have with a bank in order to qualify. So those are some of the things that we're doing on those two fronts.
Thank you, Richard. And I would just like to add that in addition to the governor's office and other leaders, we're also working closely with the judiciary. As you've seen, there have been many orders that have been coming through and many questions from our members and partner organizations about what that means and how that will play out for practitioners and for the public. So we've been working with them. We've sent over 150 questions to them since March 16th. And we've been posting responses on our website. Please keep reaching out to us if there's anything that you need clarity on. That's what we're here to do. And we're also providing updates from what some of the local courts are doing, as well as there is not always uniformity. So we want to make sure you know what's going on in each court. In addition to those connections, we've also been involved in weekly calls with the managing partners of some of the largest law firms in Maryland to talk about strategies to survive through the pandemic and what that means for businesses and the legal community. And if I could ask Anna Scholl, who's the Deputy Executive Director on this call, to jump in, and she'll also give us a few updates. Thanks, Anna.
Sure, thanks, Shallie. So I just wanted to, as you guys maybe have known, we've been really pushing out a lot of webinars that are COVID related. As Richard mentioned, the Paycheck Protection Program from the CARES Act has been a point of confusion. We held a webinar on that yesterday in conjunction with Glenn Frost. And that at the peak of that webinar, we had almost 430 people watching it live. And it's been viewed well over 3,000 times since then. All of the webinars that we're doing right now are complimentary, and we are recording them as well. So much like this, we're making everything available after the fact. As we know, everybody's days are kind of mixed up, and it might be hard to get away. We have several webinars coming up next week. To the extent you're interested, I want to highlight a couple of them. We have a webinar on the force majeure and insurance coverage issues, which has been a big question that's come up often. We also have one by the United States attorneys for COVID-related consumer fraud issues and law enforcement. As if you've been paying attention to news, there's a lot of new scams out there. So this is kind of helping people watch and watch out for those, and also help clients that may have been affected. And then particularly, and I know Lisa will probably mention this as well, we do have a webinar on Friday called Midday Reset. It's with James Hyland. He's from Spark Vision. It's a consulting group that does mindfulness, anxiety and stress relief. So he's going to be leading a live online class on Friday at noon. So if you're interested in that and just kind of stepping away from all of this, that might be a great session for you to join. Again, all complimentary. I also just want to take this time to kind of provide some updates on the annual meeting. I'm not sure if anyone here has registered or not, or is considering coming, but as of today, right now, the annual meeting is on. We are obviously in the background working through a lot of contingency planning, evaluating our options in terms of postponement and cancellation. And we have set a target date of April 21st as a final decision-making day. That gives us about a 60-day or 45 to 60-day window for us to kind of convey all of the information to the participants, vendors, exhibitors, and things like that. So as of today, it's still going forward. But like I said, we are looking at some contingency plans. If you have any feedback on that, it's been really helpful to kind of hear from members that have planned to go or would like to attend. Our contingency potential dates, should we decide to postpone, are the end of August. We've heard positives and negatives about those dates. Also just interested whether, the dates that exist, if you think those would be viable or not viable for you to attend. All those are very important for us as we kind of make this decision. So if you have any feedback, feel free to send it to me. It's anna@msba.org, or throw it up in the chat box. I'd love to hear that as we kind of think through our contingency plans with that. Shelley, I'll send it back to your way.
Thanks, Anna. I just want to check if Julianne is on this call from MSBA to give some updates on publications. And I'll go ahead and just give an update. So we are still working hard to produce content. We've been doing 2 e-weeklies, which have been going out to the membership to just give you the latest information and news. We will be having a bar journal that's coming out. We'll be doing it digitally at this time, given the crisis, but that'll have a lot of good, helpful content for you. And we also have a few publications upcoming this spring. We're going to have electronically stored information in Maryland courts coming out in April. We'll have a lien stripping title as well in April, and then criminal pattern jury instructions that'll be later in the spring. And all of that information is available on our website, so we'd ask you to check that out, and we'll be happy to process your orders and provide that content to you. In addition to the webinars that Anna had mentioned and this series of coffee chats that we're starting, we've also been having some town halls with section and committee leaders, as well as local and specialty bars. And we're continuing those conversations as well, because in a time like this, we really want to make sure that the whole legal community is working together and that we're understanding what the issues are and figuring out solutions. So we'll continue to do that. We had started a few in-person events around the state and in Washington, D.C. This spring that we called Connections events. And we still want to continue that sense of community. So we'll be taking those virtual later this month, and we'll be sending you information about that. So we do hope you can join us. It'll be a format like this, but with a broader audience, as we'll be inviting members from all over the state to join. We've also been working with our partner, Access to Justice Commission, and they have been very connected to the civil legal aid community. They've been meeting weekly to understand their questions and concerns, and have incorporated that in our questions and discussions with the governor's office and the judiciary. They also have a dedicated COVID page that has a bit of a different angle. It's there for civil legal aid organizations, but also for Marylanders who want to understand how they can access the courts and deal with issues, and remote legal clinics to find out what those opportunities are. And they're also, A2JC is also focusing on more of a public awareness campaign in the coming weeks to make sure that everybody understands what their rights are and what information is there. So that's a little bit of background on what we've been up to in the MSBA. And I'd like to turn to Lisa Kaplan, who is our new director of the Lawyer Assistance Program, to talk about wellness offerings that we also have at this time.
Hey, thanks, Shelley. Yes, to keep you emotionally resilient, we have a lot of different resources for you. We have a health and wellness page that has online classes, has workouts, yoga, the tip of the day, and a lot of other resources that can be really helpful during these difficult times. Also, I've started a support group on Wednesdays from 2 to 3, which is a discussion format. You can come in. It's for an hour, but it has usually lasted about a half hour, 40 minutes. It's a great way to just kind of reset and talk about what's going on and deal with the emotional side of everything. And then also the Lawyer Assistance Program is always available to help. It can help with any kind of problems that someone is having. It is not just a substance abuse program. We have a network of counselors throughout the state. So when we are able to get up and move around again, we can set you up with somebody close to where your home is. You don't have to come down to Baltimore to see me. We can handle any type of problems that you come in for. It's free, it's confidential. You can make a referral also if you're ever concerned about an attorney, if you're ever concerned about their mental health. You can call me anonymously and you can talk with me about what's going on with them. It will not get them in trouble, but it may actually end up saving their life. So we have a fund as well that can help pay for mental health and substance abuse counseling. So that can be everything from helping to pay for ongoing weekly counseling to need if they can, to
Lisa?
treatment or treatment to meet with a psychiatrist. So that is available as well. Also, Anna had mentioned we do have the great program next Thursday, midday reset, and that will be a great way to, again, deal with the emotional side of this. James has it's a really good program. It ties in a lot of different resources, and I think it will be very helpful. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And then I'm going to ask Angela Monroe, who is the section liaison, to say hello, see your face, and give us an update. Thanks, Angela.
Thanks, Shelly. Good morning, everybody. Currently, the section has been working on their program for the annual meeting, which is a joint program with the Admin Law section on Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. They're also planning for the Fall 2020 Law Institute. We've also been encouraging sections to continue adding content to their section page to show the value of being a section member. I'd be happy to help set up webinars related to COVID or anything else for the next fiscal year if you want to have any more events. Frank, did you want to jump in with anything?
And while Angela's sorting that,
Yeah.
what I'd like to just say is to thank all of you. It looks like we have a good number of folks on the call. We want to thank you for joining us this morning. And what we'd like to do, we can get
Okay,
Frank
am I on now?
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
There we are.
This is not an intuitive system, I must say, but I finally did get loaded. I heard what Angela said about our planning. I mean, we are wondering to see what's going to happen with the annual meeting, but I mean, this is not a time of a lot of certainty anyway. So it's all day to day. We understand that. The one thing we are trying to do is we will put out we do a quarterly newsletter, and just with a number of the governor's orders that have been mentioned, particularly dealing with state and local government, Public Information Act, open meetings, options, and partly dealing with the Open Meetings Compliance Board and the Attorney General's office as far as laying out what some options might be, such as using this process for some open meetings as long as people have access, but also dealing with postponing municipal elections, and then of course the federal law that was passed regarding FMLA and additional sick leave, just to get some basic information out to members as well, which, you know, MSBA has been doing that for not only those issues, but also certainly the courts. And that's about what I can provide at this point. We are looking forward to the fall, as Angela did mention, and planning ahead on that. And as I said, still looking forward to the annual meeting, and hopefully that will go forward as planned.
Thanks, Frank. And what I'd like to do now is just open it up to the section members that are here on the call. If you can give us any idea of how things have been going for you, and if there's any questions you have for us at the MSBA, we'd welcome your thoughts at this time. And also, if there have been any of your own efforts at, you know, helping people to understand the emergency and kind of figuring out how to deal with the courts and access the courts. You know, this is all information that we're looking to share at this time with each other. And then, as Anna has listed in the chat, for potential opportunities for us to make sure that the larger legal community has that information. So I know we have a lot of people on this call, so feel free to jump in whenever you like. And Frank, if you have any ideas about sort of what your section could be focused on, I know what you've mentioned in the newsletter, but
Yeah.
any other sort of community-based ideas like working remotely or, making sure that your business is able to continue, even hearing anything like that from the section, just to try to understand what the main issues are at this time.
Well, I think between this and because I'm also involved in the Municipal Attorneys Association, again, some of the concerns that came up very quickly were, okay, how do we handle? How do you do a public meeting without having the public there? And then some big questions when I mentioned the Public Information Act. I've seen a few articles saying, oh, everybody's putting this off and they're not going to be responding. But the governor's, I believe it was the March 12th order, or one of the March 12th orders, extended deadlines and also authorized agencies and local governments to suspend certain internal deadlines or their own deadlines or timelines when they are the administrator. And we did have some question about that. And I would say that the governor's office has been very good for us to work with, as certainly MSBA has found, to try and interpret. Once you put out an order, you then have to interpret it, and to find that we did have some authority as each agency and as each local government to extend some of the PIA deadlines, because one of them is, for instance, you're supposed to respond in 10 days after a request, to at least say, well, if it's going to take longer or if it's going to be denied. And staff working remotely without, in some cases, access to the documents or the data that's being requested, it's hard to respond with a whole lot of any sort of information. So those, I know some local governments have been extending it, but we did have to get that clarification. And there was a lot of work on extending elections. Those are the kinds of things that that I have heard is just the operational, trying to get through as a in terms of advising primarily local governments, but state agencies as well, and just trying to get through this day to day. I know that there are challenges in terms of remote work and all that, but I think we all share that to some extent.
Great. And if I could just see, I see we have a lot of folks that are on the call. Valerie, are you able to give us sort of an update on how things are going for you and what your experience has been?
So you are talking about Valerie Green, right? There's not another Valerie.
Yes, that's you.
It's been a little bit challenging with respect to those people who are not, who are a little adverse to video technology and video conferencing. But the problem that we do see is that if their systems, people's systems aren't compatible with yours, or they can't open the documents, or there is some issue with respect to, let's say some of the documents need to be, I guess, revised or changed, and there's a technology difficulty there. But I think people are on board with trying to come up with solutions and trying to ensure that everybody can be on the same page. I've not had any issues with open meetings issues because we don't have a board per se, at least not right now. Our Maryland Green Building Council with my client DGS isn't meeting right now. So there's not a board issue there for Open Meetings Act issues. But as far as our office is concerned, I think we're pretty much on board. We're just trying to knock out the kinks, I think.
Great, thank you. And I see in the chat, Deborah has put in a question for Richard. Richard, can you provide any more detail about the content of the bill related to remote notarization and witnessing in terms of what's being proposed as acceptable procedures and practice?
Deborah, that's a good question. I've had one conversation with the Secretary of State's office. Now, the problem is, I think it's mostly support staff who are fielding the inquiries that come in via voice. Because getting someone live on the phone has been pretty much of a challenge so far. Most of the questions I've received have been things like, do all of the people have to be involved in the session? Okay, in other words, can there be multiple sessions for notarization? The answer to that appears to be no. Everyone has to be remote at the same time. Other questions like, are there, I don't know if you saw the interpretive guidance from there was sort of a combined effort of the governor's Office of Legal Counsel and the Secretary of State's office. What they did was they enumerated a list of vendors that was non-exhaustive. So they said you could use e-notary or this company or this company or this company. And all of the questions that I received were asking about other platforms like Zoom. And my guess is that Zoom is not currently one of those based on all that I've come across so far. So this sort of illustrates the issue that I was sort of alluding to earlier, and that is you've got the very broad executive order, then you've got interpretive guidance, and when people see the interpretive guidance, that puts more meat on the bones, but you could still, what if most of the interpretive guidance, and so we're developing questions that drill down even further. I don't know if that helps or answers your question, but that's sort of the experience. And since no one has a roadmap for how to answer these questions, and the questions are coming at them pretty much like a fire hose, we're getting answers. It's just that it's understandably in dribs and drabs.
Thanks, Richard. We have another question here that asks, does the suspension of filing deadlines include interrogatories? So as I mentioned, the last administrative orders that just came out last Friday did deal with the suspension and tolling of some deadlines. We have sent another set of questions to the judiciary, and that was included questions related to discovery and deadlines related to scheduling orders. So as soon as we obtain that clarification, we'll share that with you. So thank you for that question. And if anyone else had any other questions related to the administrative orders, we're happy to take those now. And because as I said, we are continuing that conversation. Or if there's been any of your experiences in court or kind of dealing with the remote procedures, we're also very interested to hear about that and think about how we can support each other and support you for that. If anybody'd like to join in, I'd welcome that.
Hey, Shallie, it looks like we have Tom Yeager on the call. Tom, did you want to jump in and give any insight on how things are going for you?
I'll take that as a no, Tom.
I'm just going to assume some people are on mute and they're saying wonderful, great things.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Robert Taylor. I'm down in Salisbury. My question is more local government law oriented. I sent in a response yesterday. I haven't heard it mentioned, but some of the local jurisdictions here are imposing their own various restrictions, including in Worcester County and Ocean City, short-term rental restriction, which I think lasts until the end of the month. There's two aspects of this, some good, some bad. Obviously, if they turn away people, they're going to come to other counties that do not have those restrictions. And I think as warm weather emerges, we're going to be seeing an influx down here from areas that have a much higher infection rate. So my question is basically, what authority does local government, municipalities, or counties have to impose these local restrictions? And if there is none, and I've looked through state regulations and scratching my head on that, should there be some authority from the governor? because there is, as you probably know, a restriction right now on people coming into Maryland. They have to self-quarantine for 14 days. Of course, you can move throughout Maryland without that restriction. And somebody could easily say, well, I'm going from my home in Gaithersburg and I'm going to shelter in place in my condo down in Ocean City. And I think it would be hard to restrict that person right now. But at least from our standpoint, we're going to be seeing an influx of people with a much higher infection rate than is manifest here on the shore. I don't think there's yet 100 people that have been confirmed on the entire shore. Delaware, of course, is much different. Sussex and Kent County are up in the hundreds. So, I mean, we're very fortunate so far, but it looks like that living in La La Land may soon end. So that's my question. I mean, what are the authority for local restrictions of any kind, and should the state issue some further guidelines or orders along those lines?
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, Robert.
Can you hear me? This is Tom, and I was asked a question earlier, and I was going to respond, and I don't know if you heard me or not because I unmuted my phone, but I didn't hit the *6, so I don't know if you heard me or not when I attempted to speak earlier.
We didn't, so please repeat for everyone.
Oh, sure. Well, let me tackle Robert's question first because it's of interest to me. Because where we are Robert's on the lower shore and I'm on the upper shore, and we have people that have weekend homes here, rental properties here, etc., and that's obviously a concern. Before it became clear that recreational boating was banned, there were a number of people from New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania coming down here to work on their boats one weekend. So it's a concern. My take on it, Robert, is similar to yours. That I think to do the regulations, there has to be some type of enabling legislation. If you already have provisions in place that allow you to regulate, I think you can. But without some type of enabling legislation or authority, I don't think you can regulate things that are generally within the bailiwick of the state. There's probably some type of implied preemption there. So I tend to agree with what you're thinking is as much as we'd like to do it, I don't think we can absent some authority to do it. Now, there may be some authority already there that we may be able to try to stretch or whatever to do, but absent specific authority, I don't think we can. Perhaps an executive order may allow it, similar to what the governor has done for some other things. Most notably, municipalities were having problems finding a way to postpone elections because most charters specifically set a certain date or a certain time in the year when the elections would be. And the normal process for amending a charter involves a waiting period, a referendum, and everything. So the executive order suspending a portion of the state code took care of that so municipalities could immediately amend their charters. The first question to me that was posed about how I'm doing, I'll answer that briefly since there was a substantive question asked. I'm in my office working. The office I have is in a building that I own, but I'm in here by myself. I have 3 staff members, 1 full-time, 2 part-time. One of the part-time is it's kind of like a paid internship. It's a college student. When they closed the college, he got sent back home. So that position ended. Another part-time is a lady that has been with me for 20 years, and she's over 70 and has some health issues. So when this started, before there were any orders, we decided that she should stay home and not work. And then I have a full-time assistant, and she was coming in the office with me. And when the governor did the last stay-at-home order, I felt it would be best that she stay at home and not come in the office. So my plan there is my plan is to apply for PPA loan with a local bank so I can pay her. My belief is, and I'm not really, you mentioned technology resistant, I'm not really set up to have somebody work remotely. I think it's limited on what they could do, and plus, I find that the person that I would have that do needs more supervision than what could be provided with working remotely. So my view of the law is I essentially have three options. One is get the PPA loan so I can pay her. And if I get that, I want to pay the part-time person that's been very loyal and with me, who would never ask for anything, but I'd like to pay her if I get the PPA loan. The other option is I just furlough or lay off the full-time employee and she apply for unemployment, and that jacks me up on my unemployment rate, because as a small business and with only a few employees and a small payroll, the benefits to wages ratio gets high. And I've done this before, but the rare occasion when I've terminated employees, I run through a 2 to 3 year period where I pay a high unemployment insurance rate. Or the third is, I guess she may qualify for that sick leave and I pay that, but I'm really not in a position to pay somebody for 12 weeks for not working out of my own pocket. So it sounds a little cynical, but it is what it is. And I think that's the reality of a small business. For me, I'm fortunate because a lot of my practice is representation of local government. So I have actually been fairly busy lately because of all the issues that COVID-19 has caused. And at least so far, local governments have, the ones that I work or have as clients, they're paying invoices, so they're paying bills. All right, I'll yield the floor.
Tom, I just a couple of other thoughts on this matter of preemption and local restrictions. There is, under the Express Powers Act, at least for charter counties, I'm not sure about code counties, pretty broad legislative enabling statute for public health and welfare. So, I mean, one possibility, of course, is to pass legislation. However, would that be preempted by the rather extensive system of orders by the governor? So there's a lot of uncertainty here. And of course, as I say, the problem for us is we're going to be looking at an influx, I'm sure, in a few more weeks, maybe even this weekend starting, of a number of people coming in from throughout the state and from that matter, from other states. So I think that's a question that's going to become an increasing concern for local jurisdictions, at least down on this part of the lower shore.
Right. Well, you also have the issue of non-resident property owners, because I don't know if you follow this, the Outer Banks in Dare County, and I think in Currituck County, they are not allowing non-resident property owners to come in. So you own, let's say you own a condominium or you own a house, if that county is not your primary residence, you're not allowed in, and they've just filed a federal suit. The property owners, a group of them, have filed a federal suit on that, saying you can't do that. So that's going to be interesting to see where that goes.
Yeah, I hadn't seen the federal suit, but I know that there's an article I've seen. North Carolina has a statute that provides pretty broad enabling legislation to counties and possibly munis too. Now, some states, New Jersey, the governor there has actually issued enabling executive order to the counties for the Jersey Shore to provide provide for restrictions.
Right. That
So
would be
there's a lot of difference around the country, but Maryland seems to be, at the inactive end on this.
Yeah, I think order would be the most expedient way. To deal with it, if there was some type of an executive order that says that local jurisdiction can pass regulation to deal with rental properties or non-resident properties. Although I think the non-resident property owner, I think there's serious constitutional questions on that.
Yeah, I do too.
Can someone else join in here?
No, you can't, Kevin, but others can. No, I'm just joking.
I just wanted to.
Say.
Sure, this is Shaoli again. We're getting a lot of, thank you for that that conversation. I think that's an important issue, and we'll certainly look to the governor's office to see where they're at and if they have been discussing or talking about this. We do have a lot of comments here about executing documents from agencies during this time. And I see we have some comments from Derek and from John Norris and Valerie. So I'd welcome you all to share some of those thoughts and where you're headed, if you can. And it looks like, John, that you have received electronic scans. And Derek, it looks like you have, you're planning to go onto WebEx in the next few weeks. So just wondering if you could give this larger group a little bit of context for that.
Sure. This is John Norris. Good morning, everyone. We're over in Calvert County on the western shore, not the upper or the lower, but down south of D.C. We had given administrative leave to county employees last Friday. Prior to that, our IT department rolled out about 300 laptops. So we are fortunate enough to have a lot of departments working from home and unfortunate enough to have a lot of departments working from home. So they're still sending in contract reviews. Instead of sending over paper copies, they are able to scan, and they're sending the scans over. We're getting those electronically, either by, we use a software program to send large files called Clearview, or they can send it by email if it's under 5 megs. We created a stamp. It was fairly easy in Adobe Acrobat. If anybody needs tips, I can walk you through that. And then we just apply the stamp, or we apply comments and send the documents back.
Thanks, John.
This is Derek Baumgartner with the Baltimore City Zoning Board. Just very briefly, we are looking into, we had suspended all public hearings for the month of April. We had a bit of a blowback from the development community with that one. But we are planning on test running some virtual hearings through a platform called WebEx, which is a Cisco platform that allows, either for meetings or for events, allows the administrator or the moderator to control who speaks when they speak. We're also planning on providing a telephone line as well, so folks can call in. So kind of a different mashup of things. We're running those ideas through the city law department to make sure that they comply with the Open Meetings Act and then state land use article, as well as city code. The Baltimore City Planning Commission has been holding virtual hearings, I think one so far, and then one coming up either today or next Thursday, and those have been going fairly well. The moderator has to be on his or her toes. They have to be able to mute folks who are kind of providing information that might not be relevant. But those have been going fairly well. So we're going to try to model our own hearings after the Planning Commission with some subtle differences. So that's what we're doing right now.
Thanks, Derek. So we have a few more minutes left, and I think what would be helpful is if we could hear a little bit, now that we've sort of understood as we've been reacting and sort of looking at the orders and thinking through how we can move forward. What are your thoughts or concerns about, as this is continuing, as this is extending, maybe some of the longer term concerns that you have, or what you see as some of the larger issues in the coming weeks, as that can certainly inform our direction of how we can support you and have, appropriate programming. So I'd welcome any thoughts about that.
This is Robert Taylor again. Just one other item that may be of interest. FEMA has issued special regulations for reimbursement for COVID-19 expense that liberalize its position generally. I can't give you a lot of details on it, but if anybody's interested, there's a very good webinar on this at the School of Government at the University of North Carolina. that's about 10 days old now, and you could probably find it by just Googling FEMA COVID University of North Carolina, and you'd probably get a hit on it. The first 15 or 20 minutes are about the FEMA regs. The rest of the program is primarily North Carolina regs, but the first part of it, I think, would apply most anywhere, and it's a very good presentation.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Suzanne Berger. I'd like to just ask a question or make a request. I represent Baltimore County government in workers' compensation and detention and disability matters. And one of our current issues we're tackling is this whole issue of telehealth. So any webinar or any programming that might address that issue would be really helpful, I think, to a lot of the jurisdictions. We have a lot of doctors that have decided, for obviously good reason, that they're not going to see anybody for an evaluation, and these aren't essential, or it's not treatment, and it's not necessarily elective because people can't work or need to retire on disability, and they can't get an evaluation to certify that. So best practices with telehealth and whatever is out there technologically to facilitate that is what I'm looking for. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. That's very, very timely and something that we'll look into. I see in the comments that Kevin said BB&K is holding a webinar on FEMA's reimbursement. So that's a good resource. And Kevin's also provided some authority relating to the municipalities issue. So thank you for that. Does anyone else have any other sort of issues in terms of remote proceedings? This telehealth issue is certainly something that is affecting people immediately. But are there any other types of hearings and tools that you'd like some more resources on, or any other webinars? Okay. Well, as always, we have, as Anna mentioned, we have our feedback chat. We have Angela, you have myself, you have anyone that you can reach out to. And I'd certainly just open this up in the last few minutes. If anyone has any other questions, now's the time. We will continue this dialogue, and we hope you can continue to join this chat. We'll gather every couple of weeks to connect. But in the meantime, right, and Anna's put in here the feedback chat. And I certainly think that as you're working through some of these issues for remote documents, I think that process and procedure will be helpful to the legal community. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and maybe put together some content to help your fellow professionals. So I'll just see anything else here in the chat, Anna. I didn't see, I think we've covered most of it. But I do want to thank everyone sincerely for joining us. We'll send some of these notes out to the rest of the section who wasn't able to join. And many thanks to Frank for joining us and leading the charge.
Sure. Well, thank you all for all of your efforts.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much for joining.